Hey everyone, thanks for listening again to NowLoadingCast. This is our feedback episode from episode 1-3 about our hardcore games, tough, challenging boss fights, difficult games, etc. So thanks for everyone who called into this. We got a lot of great calls actually, which is really cool to hear. If you have no idea what this is and you think this is a new episode, it kind of is. We actually have a voicemail line that you can call into. That number is 605-777-0433. And you can give us some feedback, comments, share your own stories about responses to all of our main episodes. And we'll play them back here and let you guys actually share some of the spotlight here. And I mentioned this last episode. I want to just reiterate it here at the top. We will be following a new consistent release schedule every Wednesday morning. So Tuesday late night, Wednesday morning is when the new episodes will be published. And it'll follow a main episode. Next week after will be a feedback episode in response to that. And then the next week we'll be back to a main episode. So every month you're going to get about 2 main core themed episodes and 2 feedback episodes to kind of just keep it consistent and regular from us here at the podcast. Also, I'm doing this episode solo as Rich is actually out of town on a work trip. So he actually gave us a voicemail message of his own we'll listen to later. So right now, let's go ahead and start playing back your guys'. All happening right here, right now.
Darren, Rich, this is Ryan Larson, long-time listener, first-time caller. Listen to your most difficult games, like hardest games episode. I gotta say, for me, I just wanted to chip in and say that when you start going old school, it gets harder and harder. Lion King and Comics Zone, both on the Sega Genesis, are 2 of the hardest games I've ever played in my life. In fact, a few years ago, I bought an Ouya just so I could emulate those games and do a save state load so I could finally say that I have beat them, which I did. And even with the save state, it took forever to beat those awful, terrible, wonderful games. And then I would say, personally for me, the most difficult and frustrating game of all time is Bucky O'Hare on the original Nintendo. I don't know why, but I have a love for anthropomorphic rabbits, which made me obsessed with that game, and it truly was one of those old-school NES quote-unquote classics where you had to memorize every single nook and cranny, little tiny bit, otherwise you would die if you hit it type games. And same thing with the Ouya, I was finally able to beat that game. But just want to chip in and tell you guys you're doing a great job. Love the episodes.
Awesome. Thanks, Ryan. Actually, I don't really remember Bucky O'Hare much. I mean, the name is familiar, but I don't actually remember ever playing it myself. It sounds like one of those classic NES games, though, that were overly challenging, overly complex, partially maybe due to bad design, but also because people thought that's what games should have been back then. The other one I like to hear about is Lion King. I also felt that game was like overly difficult, and it was odd because it's based on like a children's movie property. I would love to hear if anybody actually ever beat it without like codes or cheat devices or anything, because it just, I don't know. It was really oddly designed. I could remember getting to a level where you had to like roar at some monkeys, and it was almost like a puzzle because they had to like toss you around and advance you through the level. And if you didn't know the right combination, you were kind of just stuck being thrown around random locations and having to start all over again. But yeah, that game was super, super frustrating. I did actually have Comic Zone on my list as well. I meant to talk about in that first episode, or in the episode itself. Yeah, that game was just real brutal. I loved its design, though. Being a comic book nerd myself, that's probably where I was first falling in love with comics. You actually like punch through like the panel gutters and stuff like that to advance the level, but sometimes it wasn't really totally clear where you needed to go, and there was just some unavoidable like enemy hits that just kind of like really ruined the experience, and I could never get very far. But yeah, thanks a lot for calling in, Ryan, and admitting that you owned an Ouya. I hope that was well worth the $100 or whatever you spent on it, because now it's gone and bit the dust and no longer works. Well, maybe I guess it does if you have it loaded up with some content. But yeah, thanks again, Ryan.
Hardest game level in general thing ever was pretty much any level at all of the Super Nintendo version of the Lion King video game. That or the Spider-Man Maximum Carnage level where you had to climb up the side of the wall while Streak shot lightning bolts at you with only a slight warning from your spider sense. Darren Hepke's loser. Bye.
I don't agree with being called a loser, but I'm going to keep it in there. I'm not going to censor my audience, and just be fair, letting you have that one, Alex. But another shout out to Lion King. Again, overly difficult children's cartoon movie video game adaptation. Whether it was the SNES or Genesis version, you weren't having a good time with that one. Maximum Carnage, though, I loved that game too. I got pretty far in that game as a kid. You had like a lot of cool like cameo characters you can call in for like assists during levels, and I remember really having a lot of like a really good time seeing the obscure characters they had that can come in and the attacks that they can do. I do remember getting to a point where you actually fought Carnage and a couple of other villains like on a rooftop level after the Central Park level. I got there like once and with one life left, and was quickly just destroyed and could never get back there again. It was always the Central Park stage that I would get just kind of wiped out, and I think that's the level actually you got like a Deathlock assist character in it too. But that game was really great. Just a overly difficult beat 'em up, but still. I think it was just maybe my bias to Spider-Man games that also made me overlook it, but I still think it was a pretty well-designed beat 'em up I had a lot of fun with. So thanks, Alex Hupke, for that. We actually named callers. We have 2 Alexes and 2 Ryans calling this episode, so thank you, Alex Hupke, for that one.
Hey, what's up, everyone? This is Rich. I just called in, actually, because I was listening to some of the feedback, and a lot of people were commenting about the Lion King 2D side-scrolling game and how difficult that was and frustrating and just aggravating in general. And although I don't remember having exact experience with the Lion King, I do remember a lot. There was a lot of Disney games around that era that were 2D platforming games, and the one that jumped into my mind was DuckTales, and that game was difficult. I recently played the remastered one, and I went back to it and kind of tried it out, and it was incredibly difficult, and I think just the physics didn't work the way I thought they would, spoiled with modern physics and whatnot. But even as a child, I remember enjoying it, but never really being able to get past a certain point. So that was something that popped into my head, and I just wanted to leave my own feedback. All right, guys. See you soon, or talk to you later. Bye.
Yeah, DuckTales is rough. I did like that. I thought it was well designed, though. It wasn't one of those bad games that, or hard games because of bad design. Like, you could get good at that, and you could follow the mechanics appropriately, and like kind of dominate that game. And you can tell like enemy placement and trap placement and all that stuff was put there for a reason. Doesn't stop it from being a challenging game, though. I never actually went through and played that remaster myself. I probably should. Yeah, I mean, it got some good reviews, and it was a good game. So yeah, thanks for calling in, Rich. Enjoy your trip. We'll see you here next week.
Hey guys, first time listener, long time caller. Yeah, so I did send out that Ollie Ollie challenge, and you destroyed my score. But I do know that I sent out a Hotline Miami challenge to you, and that was never answered to. So yeah, there's that. If I had PlayStation Plus, I'd go back to Ollie Ollie, play a little, try to beat your score. But as far as like challenging games that I played, I should have thought about this before calling. I just wanted to brag a little bit. I guess I'll call back.
Classic Santino. I did not remember this Hotline Miami challenge. I absolutely love those games. I've already said that a couple times, so I will probably boot those games up, and this is a valid excuse for me to just start playing them again a little bit. Those games were just fun. Pick up, quick, play, super weird, super bizarre, super like awesome story, and great soundtrack. We haven't talked a lot about soundtracks on these episodes yet. Maybe that's an upcoming episode concept. Yeah, I'm going to take a look out for that and see what level it was, what you think you outed me on, because I can easily dominate you. And thanks for bringing up a relevant, difficult game of your own, or not. I guess you can save that for a future episode and call in. Well, actually, at the 11th hour, Santino called in. So I'm editing this into my almost finished episode and going to go ahead and drop the rest of Santino's message. It's actually a pretty cool story about The Last of Us. Why am I spoiling this for you? I will stop talking. Santino Part 2, here you go.
Shit. Hey, so Santino again calling back. One of the most memorable, hardest parts in the game. I always play every game that I ever buy on the hardest difficulty. And so when I played The Last of Us, I played on Grounded on the PS4, and it was ridiculously hard. Well, I ended up beating the game. It was super enjoyable. And then you go Grounded Plus. So I'm like, all right, cool. I started playing Grounded Plus, and then I stopped. That was about 3 years ago. So recently I had a surgery, so I started playing games again. And so I'm like, hey, let me try The Last of Us. Let me see where my last save point's at. And it was at a part where you're playing as Ellie, and you're with the dude from that college, I guess. He's from that group where you just basically killed everybody. And you're trapped in some abandoned warehouse, fighting off a bunch of the... Shit, I'm so bad with names. Fuck. Whatever those things are that you're fighting, the infected. The clickers, you're fighting the clickers, and I had 0 ammo for all my weapons. I only had, I could only stab them from behind. So I kept having to have the guy get attacked, and I would run, stab him, and then start running in a different direction. And I died literally 37 times, I think is what I counted. It was 37, 39, but it wasn't 40, and I was like, alright, cool, at least I didn't hit 40, fuck. But yeah, I spent my week recovery doing that, and I just kept, dying, 10 times, and I was, alright, I'll go play UFC for a little bit to calm down. Then I would go back, die again, I'm like, alright, let me go play UFC so I'd relax. And finally, I stabbed him all at the right time. One of the guys drops down ammo. I made a little Molotov cocktail and threw it at the bloater that comes at the end. And it's it goes to the cutscene where he's talking, and I was like, fuck! I yelled so loud, and I was so happy, and that's pretty much it. Aside from that, the other one that was a pain in the ass was The Witcher on Death March. That shit was impossible. I got 25% through the game, and I was like, you know what? Fuck this. This is stupid. And that's it. Fun times. Good stuff, guys.
That's actually a really good story about The Last of Us. That's one of those difficult moments where well, obviously in the moment it's frustrating, but it's if you really, really get that right time, right luck, right skill, application all at one go, you can finally do it. And when it finally happens, it's almost better than beating the game sometimes. It's oh, thank God. That's what that Hades God of War 3 battle was for me, or any of the Titan Souls bosses. It was just finally actually seeing the moment through, the difficult through. That point's really cool. So that's actually a really cool story. Yeah, that game's already pretty challenging as it is, and with the scarce ammo and all that stuff, I'm assuming that once the difficulties get even higher like that, it's even harder to get, is what it sounds like. So I love that game. I cannot wait for the Last of Us Part 2, but I don't think I would play that game on a harder difficulty, because having those limited resources already gives me this claustrophobic feeling as it is, even on the standard difficulties. And when I feel like that, I just can't really play through a game. It's why I can't really comfortably play through a Resident Evil game solo. I will hand the controller off to people and play for spurts and all that stuff. But if I have limited ammo or limited resources to actually defend myself or fight an enemy off of the game, I just get real claustrophobic feeling, and I just can't do it. And even though the games are usually designed to, you have the ability to find the resources, or you don't necessarily need them, or there won't be a lot of enemies, just that fear factor in my brain just really makes me feel uneasy, and I've never been able to actually really commit to or or play through a game like that. But The Last of Us it did have enough balance. It wasn't as hardcore like that Resident Evil 7 experience was that I was going through with that. But yeah, thanks for that, Santino. I never played The Witcher though. I think Rich has. Maybe Rich can follow up with that later. I doubt Rich played it on the harder difficulty though. But it's interesting to hear that you also play them on the hardest difficulty settings when you get them. I remember one time I was talking about, I think that's why I played God of War 3 like that on Titan mode, was because I was talking to my brother, and we had also just recently finished Dante's Inferno, and I just went through on the normal difficulty, but he's like told me he played it on the harder difficulty for some reason, and I asked him why, and I don't really remember his specific reason, but it was just like, that challenge, and he doesn't want to just kind of like breeze through it as like a cakewalk. He does want there to be a little bit of a challenge, but to me, sometimes with story games, I don't mind the normal difficulties because I want to just experience the story. But it does make sense though to not just like cakewalk through it, but actually use like the skills and mechanics of the game in the right application to actually overcome some challenges and just make it feel that much more rewarding. So I think that's where all that comes from. But thanks for redeeming yourself with this episode, Santino, and actually calling through and giving us some of your challenging moments there. You almost left us hanging there with you trying to taunt me with a Hotline Miami score, which I definitely will go back and demolish you on. Thanks again.
Hey guys, Ryan here again. Just wanted to address a question that Darren threw out at me at the last episode. It was regarding Street Fighter Alpha 3's World Tour mode. And yes, I definitely played the console version. I actually played the Dreamcast version, which was slightly different. They added a couple extra things from the PlayStation version, but essentially the same thing. Yeah, World Tour mode, man. Oh man, so many good memories from that mode. Actually, not as many frustrating ones as you might think. Fighting Shinnokuma was definitely a struggle. Definitely took tons and tons and tons of time playing and some of that. But honestly, I think I had more issue with Shin Bison. That wasn't his name it wasn't in the game, but that was kind of the name he's referred to in the arcade community. But yeah, anyways, fighting Bison. So I think I had much more of a problem with that one because he had specific special moves that regular Bison didn't actually have. And I don't know if it's the same in the PlayStation version, but you can actually unlock him as a playable character in the Dreamcast one. And the reason I had so much problems fighting him is because he had a super move, right? He has this move that most people used to know him from the Street Fighter 2 called Cycle Crusher, where he would just drill across the screen. Well, in Alpha 3, Shin Bison had the ability to fly off screen with a super, and he would charge forward with a giant Cycle Crusher that covered the whole screen. He made him invincible. It did tons of block damage. You couldn't jump and guard it. It was just ridiculous. The character was so good, and man, I was pretty close to breaking some Dreamcast controllers. Back in the day before, of course, I had arcade sticks access to them. But yeah, World Tour mode, man. Love that mode. Love that game. A phenomenal series. And I'm actually really happy to hear that you played through it, Darren, and that you enjoyed it as well.
Oh, yeah. Street Fighter Alpha 3 is probably, I want to say in my top 7 games of all time. I don't know why I had to put 7. I know like the top 5 is pretty stuck, so I think that's why I did that. But I absolutely love that game. The console version specifically because of World Tour mode. Before that, most fighting games that came to like home conversions, they had like an arcade mode. You like challenge the like random computer opponents a number of times and then fight the final boss. You got some cool games that started to add like individual character endings and stuff as they evolved, but they were ultimately the same kind of games. World Tour mode was just like this meaty bit of content that let you kind of add unique skills and abilities to your characters based on like the X, V, and A ISMs. Well, I forget what they were actually phonetically pronounced as. But that was just really cool. It added a lot to the game, a lot to the value of the disc. It still had its own arcade mode. It still had great verses. It still had tons of characters. It looked great. It was just a real great time. And I really loved the Alpha series too because of the tie-in to the Final Fight franchise. Cody, Guy, they were both in the game. I always wanted to see Hagar, but that didn't happen in at least the Street Fighter line at this point. Later on in the Versus series and stuff, we saw him. But I absolutely love Street Fighter Alpha 3, and I have no idea that there would be a more difficult character in the Dreamcast version, so I nightmare to think about that because I actually never beat Shinakuma. But thanks for that, Ryan. He actually had Ryan Lau, that is, let me clarify because we had Ryan Larson at the top of it. He actually had another bit of feedback for us, or another comment for us about his own difficult game, so we'll play that now.
Hey guys, Ryan here again. I'm responding to the episode request for tough bosses that we played. So I played a lot of fighting games over the years, of course. I've dealt with so many cheap bosses. I know, Darren, you just spoke about fighting Goro in Mortal Kombat in the last episode. But yeah, I'm going to try to skip over that and go with some oddballs. So my first one that I'm going to talk about would definitely be a really obscure game. I don't expect anyone to, well, it's as obscure as a Star Wars game can get. I don't expect anyone that really played it. It was called Star Wars Jedi Power Battles. And I played it on the PlayStation 1, but I'm pretty sure it was also on the Dreamcast. The game was multiplayer. It was third person, I want to say Skyview action game. And it was like I said, multiplayer. It had like a fixed camera, and that definitely added to some of the salt. Anyways, game was super good. You could almost throw this in my Gaming Addiction 1, because when we found this game, my brother and I, and we started playing it, we couldn't believe that we had never heard of it at the time. It played super well. Graphics are good for the time, but the boss battles and the platforming was ridiculous, especially for a game which, like I said, it was selling itself as Star Wars, so I wouldn't think they would have put so much effort into making it so ridiculously hard. But yeah, there was boss fights where expected you to be pretty perfect on like jump timing to avoid attacks, and then most of the bosses were fought via like they're in a vehicle, with a weapon, or they had like a gun. But the last boss, well, as far as we got anyways, I assume it was the last boss. We never actually looked it up. Darth Maul. So this game is ridiculously hard as a platformer. And that's a plus. If no one's ever played this game, listen right now, go look up Star Wars Jedi Power Battles. It is a fantastic platformer. It will really surprise you. Yeah. Getting to Darth Maul, holy crap. We finally get them. This game has limited lives. There probably was cheat codes, but we didn't look it up, or we didn't think at the time. We were just kids. And we finally get to Darth Maul. We probably have like the best run we ever did. We probably had like one extra life each at this point. And we're like, all right, we're both playing Jedi's, we're fighting Darth Maul. We're like, all right, there's two of us. There's no way this can be that impossible, right? So of course, Darth Maul has like all kinds of backflips, front flips. He evades just about everything. And you only have like really small windows to actually hit him. And I think the best part, as angry as we were to lose, because trust me, we lost them all the time. As angry as we were to lose, I think the best part about it all was the way he would like kill our characters was very reminiscent of the actual like movies, like how he killed Qui-Gon Jinn and some of that. And as angry as we were, we couldn't help but laugh at that. That was so funny. So yeah, Star Wars Jedi Power Battles, a really random game, super salt-inducing. The platforming was required you to be perfect sometimes, and the boss fights were just insane. And of course, not enough life, definitely.
Jedi Power Battles, yeah, I remember this game. I remember like seeing screenshots for it in like EGMs and old magazines, and I remember like liking the art style because it was like semi-realistic but semi like exaggerated. And then once I finally got my hands on like a demo of it through, I don't know, probably OPM or the official PlayStation magazine or something like that, the animations I always thought were really cool. I'm sure, like looking back on it, it probably doesn't hold up very well. But that was a game that I do remember playing a lot of that demo of, and always wanted to buy the full game. But I was never really huge in Star Wars, so I ultimately never did. I didn't realize it was actually that challenging. That's not entertaining sounding at all. Especially like when it's like bosses that are tough, like working all the way through to trying them again, and then ultimately just to fail to the boss when you're that close to a next level. That's always like super frustrating. The one I was going to assume you were going to talk about actually was because being a fighting game fan, was the Star Wars Masters of Terras Kasi, or it was a weirdly named one, but it was like a PS1 3D fighter. I thought it was terrible. I thought the controls were janky. All the characters like were thick as like tanks and just didn't move very well at all. It was just like so sluggish, but being a Star Wars fan, or if you were a Star Wars fan, I assumed you like it because it had like a lot of obscure characters, and I think it even created characters, which is probably pretty odd for Lucasfilms, like the licensing of it, since they typically, I don't think, let people do that. But that was a garbage game. Not what you talked about, but I assume that's what you were going to talk about because it was a fighting game that was poorly designed, so probably was difficult because of that. But yeah, thanks again for that, Ryan. You do like to tell a story, so we're definitely going to have you in as maybe a co-host one episode. We'll do a whole fighting game episode or something like that and bring you on. Appreciate it.
Hey, this is Alex Chung. Probably not the toughest game, but for some reason, I can't beat the Green Goblin in the Ultimate Spider-Man game. It's part of the fight where you have to mash buttons to lift a heavy object to rescue people. And at the same time, the Green Goblin throws fireballs at you. I die every time I try playing the game. I've looked up game FAQs and YouTube walkthroughs, and I still can't seem to get through it. Another controller throwing moment is Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, and it's the last RC airplane mission that has a glitch where you don't have enough fuel to pass the mission. It's not necessary to beat the game, but it's just frustrating to know it's one of the few missions that I can't beat because of a flaw. Alright, that's it. Keep up the good work, guys.
Ultimate Spider-Man. I can't believe I never actually played this game. It got great reviews, and I mean, I've loved Spider-Man games throughout the history of Spider-Man games. Like we just talked about Maximum Carnage earlier from Alex Hupke. So Alex Chung enjoying Ultimate Spider-Man. It's great to hear. The boss battles being tough in there. I don't actually remember reading or hearing about that. What I do remember hearing about a lot from this game was like the swinging mechanics and like the free roaming of the city were like some of the best at its time for a Spider-Man game. Which obviously in a Spider-Man game, that's what you really want. But the boss battles, I didn't realize that they were that challenging. I'm gonna go back and look that up and see what that is. It was also cool because. Even though Ultimate Spider-Man was pretty popular in the comic book world, the Ultimate Universe, I don't think ever really translated out into like the mainstream, like non-comic fans. So people were probably kind of confused about what the Ultimate Universe really was. So it was kind of neat to see that come out in video game form. But if you're a comic book fan, I definitely suggest going back and picking up Bendis's Ultimate Spider-Man run. Basically retells Spider-Man's story. It just almost hits the reset button. It's in an alternate universe, and he's in school for the entire time, all the way through the entire run. So it reestablishes his origin stories. It reestablishes his villains, and kind of retells like important stories, but then also completely reimagines and does them in whole new ways for other like important kind of key Spider-Man history stories. So great comic. Always sounded like a great game. I'm sad I never got to play it, but glad I didn't get to be frustrated by some of these boss battles. I'm going to look up some videos after this for sure. Thanks, Alex Chung, for that.
As far as difficult games or bosses in my life, you guys hit on a lot of them. Ninja Gaiden was definitely a difficult game. The Turtle game on NES also gave me a lot of trouble when I was a child. But you left out one that I remember being the bane of my existence as a kid, and that would be Battletoads. I remember enjoying the game a lot, playing with my brothers, and it wasn't just one area of the game, which a lot of people will point towards the bikes you guys ride during Battletoads. But just the way the game played out altogether, I remember being difficult. As an adult, I, much like you guys, find myself passing on harder games. But I end up purchasing over and over again Dark Souls. I played Demon Souls. I got fairly far in it, much like Darren. But Dark Souls has become a joke in my small family. Every time I get it, it just ends up with me pounding my head against a wall for a few hours, putting the controller away, and quickly returning the game to GameStop. As far as boss fights go, I don't remember any boss fight being as hard as Sephiroth from Kingdom Hearts 2. Really enjoyed the Kingdom Hearts games as much as I would say now
I'm not looking forward to the third one.
Hey, thanks, Luis Sanchez, for calling it again. Yeah, the Kingdom Hearts games, I've always heard that about that Sephiroth battle. I had a buddy who was really into those, and I even think his younger brother played like 1 and 2 a lot. And one day I remember seeing him like fighting Sephiroth and thinking it was, I mean, for one, I always hated the art style. I know that's what some people love about it because it's like a Disney mashup and stuff, but so I never really was like into it myself. But just seeing him fight Sephiroth, I was like, man, this actually looks pretty challenging. I thought this game was supposed to be easy and like designed for kids. So yeah, I think that was one of their main decisions for putting him in that battle, in that arena battle thing, was to make it like a super difficult, like champions only type boss fight. So I've heard that a lot. As far as I mean, like the Souls experience, I mean, that's just, it is what it is. I mean, there's people who just get it, can wrap their heads around that, can master those mechanics, and put up with the brutality that game or that series is. And yeah, I just, as much as I played a little bit of that Bloodborne, I just can't get into the rest of them for whatever reason. I mean, I like that they're well designed. Like I mentioned in the episode, they're just too difficult for me. I'd rather, I feel like I have a better chance at beating a boss than just kind of stumbling through it for a while, only to have to take a week off and reconfigure my game plan. I actually went through and purposefully decided to not bring up Battletoads. It's funny that you bring that up, Louis, because I absolutely do agree with you. That is a super challenging game. But I know you mentioned not be specifically because like those hover bike, levels. But those are what always held me up. I remember even as a kid, my brother and I used a Game Genie, and we were able to like get past some levels and get to like that totally tubular or whatever that water level was. And even that was hard with Game Genie, like helping us all as far along the way as it possibly could. So yeah, that game was always difficult. The reason I didn't want to bring it up is because I feel like any random, wannabe YouTube like gaming personality will have like top 5 hardest games ever, and random animated Battletoads rant and all that stuff. I think enough people give Battletoads shit, and I sometimes wonder if so many people give it so much shit for being hard. And they've never actually even played it or were even aware of games back then. It's just one of those like search engine common results that people just feel obligated to talk about. So that's why I wanted to avoid it. I always loved the games though. Because the Battletoads Double Dragon crossover later was great, and the Super NES Battletoads game I had a lot of fun with too. So enjoy the series. Rash, Pimple, and Zitz, I believe, were the characters' names. But I would love to see more from that. Unfortunately, it's now owned by Xbox, and it'll only be poorly be done or be like cameo or novelty appearance in some other game like they did with Shovel Knight or something like that. So, yeah. But thanks, Louis. Thanks for that call for sure. Always appreciate it. Hopefully you guys continue to enjoy the future episodes and call in again. That being said, that was the calls that we've got at this time. I know a few of you posted some message on our Facebook page and Twitter, and I liked having conversations with you guys there. We'd totally love for you to give us a call in instead so that we can kind of fill these episodes up and talk back, especially once Rich gets back and we can expand the conversation further. It's definitely fun to do it this way and just get more conversation out of our episodes too. So really appreciate all that you guys called in with. And also for anybody who's interested in calling in as well, it doesn't have to be about the previous episode. I mean, we'll probably cover all of the responses to the previous episode at the top. But if you guys have other gaming questions or other things you want to hear our opinions on or chat about with us or share your own random rants with, or even suggestions for future episodes, give those our way too. Give us a call. It's not a creepy dude on the other end of the phone. It's just a Google voicemail set up. So you'll call in, you'll get a quick message from me, and you'll be able to leave a message. Whatever you want to say or do, it just takes a quick second, and it's just saved right there to Google Voice. So you can call anytime and not bother us. But otherwise, that's gonna, I think, do it. After hearing about the Lion King, that got me thinking about some more difficult games, but then also talking about those Spider-Man games got me thinking about some great Spider-Man games. So I wonder if we should maybe do a licensed a movie tie-in or comic or cartoon property tie-in, maybe just umbrella like licensed tie-in, like game adaptations, like good ones and bad ones and stuff. Because there's so many Spider-Man ones specific I can talk about. Like those Neversoft Spider-Man games on the PS1, those were so great. I just think because of the unlockable like comic information you can get out of them, and all the special suits and stuff that you can wear. Even though it didn't have any free roam like city swinging, it was still like a super fun game, I thought. And then that Spider-Man 2 movie game, when that blew open the open world Spider-Man swinging mechanics, I think like at that point like it was never as cool. But that game like really did such a great job with it. And then he continued on with like great reviewed games like that Ultimate Spider-Man game and some modern ones that weren't as popular. But that's Spider-Man, man. I love me some Spider-Man. So yeah, it's weird being here solo. Rich, if you're out there listening, I miss you. We need you back next week. We'll have our main episode for you guys. Thanks again, and thanks again for calling. I'm going to give you guys that number one more time, 605-777-0433. Call in anytime. We'll save up a whole pool of these messages for future episodes, and look forward to hearing you. You could always follow us on Facebook or like us on Facebook, facebook.com/NowLoadingCast, on Twitter @NowLoadingCast, on Instagram @NowLoadingCast, and wherever else. Share it with your friends. Give us a like. Help us like and subscribe to us on iTunes. I believe it's on the Google Play Store as well for a handful of Android users out there in the world. And this is Solo Darren wrapping up this episode for you guys. Look forward to talking to you more next week. Goodbye. There is one more thing. I keep forgetting to ask you guys for this. I do have it in the show notes on iTunes and on the podcast listings. But that little voice clip that we use in our intro, you can actually call into that voicemail line and leave your own voice clip in a stupid voice, an accent, your own voice, some kind of digital enhancement, whatever you want. Just saying the phrase "now loading," and we'll drop that into our future episodes as well, too. Just another dumb way to interact with you guys and have some fun. The first couple of episodes we've used our children, and we are running out of children. So we're going to start a call to arms for you guys to support us with that too. So thanks again for all of your feedback, and looking forward to your now loading voice clips. Have a good one.